Welcome to the India Fintech Diaries, the only podcast focused exclusively on the Indian fintech market. I'm Elroy.
And I'm Hemant. In each episode, we dive into the latest trends, ideas, innovations, business models, and personalities that are shaping India's fintech landscape.
We also invite amazing guests who are innovators and industry players that are driving the change that is helping make financial services more modern, innovative, and inclusive in India. Come join us as we explore the changing landscape of fintech in India. Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of India Fintech Diaries. I'm your co-host Elroy, and this is the show where we discuss the latest trends in Indian fintech, speak to some amazing guests from the industry, and deep dive into specific fintech themes.
And I'm your co host, Hemant. In today's episode, we feature a firm that's probably not as well known as some of the other large players in the financial technology space, but whose work has been instrumental in helping democratize payments. It is one of the leading UPI processors, and several large UPI apps that are today household names depend on this firm to power their backends. I am talking about Sarvatra Technologies, which has been in the banking technology space for the last 2 decades and has brought several innovative products to the market. To talk more about the journey of Sarvatra, its business model, and the way ahead, we are very pleased to have with us today Mandar Agashe, founder and managing director of Sarvatra Technologies. Welcome to India FinTech Diaries, Mandar.
Thank you.
Mandar, congrats on Sarvatra completing its 21st year in business in June. It certainly must have been an exciting journey for you as you built and grew this company. For the benefit of our listeners, can you tell us a little more about yourself, your background, and the genesis of Sarvatra?
We are a company based in Pune city, and I'm a graduate from Pune Institute of Computer Technology. So I've always wanted to do something different in the software space. During those times, most of the companies were focused on services, and we wanted to get into product. So after thinking a lot, we decided to create product around the banking industry, and in that we found a niche in the rural India, because once I was traveling in rural India, visiting our family business, and at that time I realized that there were many banks there, but none of them had any ATMs or debit cards. So that's when it kind of struck me that India has a huge amount of banking infrastructure, but really those banks are not up to the even the urban standards. Like those banks in Mumbai who have all the facilities, those facilities have not reached rural India. And then the journey started, and that's why the name Sarvatra, to make the account portable of a rural customer. That's how our journey started.
Understood, Mandar. And it's an extremely good objective that you started with. And Mandar, rightly as you said, there are about 1,400 urban cooperative banks in India today. I think it was a really brave and bold step that you chose this particular sector or area to focus upon and launched the TBA Bank Easy for urban cooperative banks as your first major product in 2000. This particular product has had amazing success with the cooperative banks, but this segment itself is a little less understood. So can you help us understand the different challenges that this particular sector faces, and considering the pandemic everything has to digitize and there is a pressure to digitize, how are the things changing in the sector?
Yeah. So these cooperative banks primarily service the rural customer, because India is a very different country once you leave the urban space. There are India is spread across small villages, and to cater to so many villages, and those people cannot move out of those villages because the farmland is around those villages. So they need services to come to them. They cannot go to the services. So that's where the cooperative banking and entire cooperative structure, whether you say Amul, who brings the milk from these cooperatives,
Hmm.
or those textile mills which got set up, or the sugar mills which got set up, all these people went with whatever industry is possible to their area and created the cooperative structure in which banking as well as the urban credit societies was one of them. So these urban cooperative banks basically cater to, they're under RBI, so they're having RBI license. So they are supposed to give all the modern facilities to their customers. So that's how our journey started. And very soon, because we developed technology which works in rural India, therefore it had to be stable, therefore it had to be a hosted technology. So all the negatives, when we try to overcome it, build a strong central platform on which any cooperative bank can do plug and play, which today you call this as cloud computing. So what we did was nothing but cloud computing 20 years ago.
That's very interesting, Mandar. The very fact that you actually looked at cloud computing way back when people used to just think of, not even think of this fancy term. I'm just curious on the cooperative banking side. Typically, if you look at how banking is working out today, right? In many cases, we are very used to, as urban people, to have a card that we can swipe easily and use easily. Second thing that we're very used to is also having a mobile app that we can transact easily. So I'm curious to know, from that particular segment that you talked about, the cooperative banking segment, right? What are some of the challenges that you think cooperative banks face for, as far as customer education is concerned, as far as digital channels are there?
So the first step was to give a debit card in the hand of the customer. So what used to happen? The customer used to be the customer of the branch,
Right,
not even the bank.
right.
He goes to some other branch. He was nobody used to recognize him.
So basically, they didn't even have the concept of branchless banking, in short.
Correct. So it was only branch based banking. So from there, once we decide to migrate that customer and get him onto the centralized platform, and around that time, we just, what you can say, tried everything for a few years, and then NPCI got formed. So
Right.
suddenly we could connect that customer, his account, which was only limited to the branch.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the account became portable. He could not only use his account to withdraw money or deposit money across the branches of his bank, but he could then walk into any ATM across India
Hmm.
and use his balance which was there. Otherwise, many times I should remember, many of my rural friends, when they used to come into the city, they were very rich, but in rural India. But in urban, they had to either carry cash in their pocket or they were nobodies in urban India.
So that must have been a complete sea change as folks started getting debit cards that could actually be used across India, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that was the first step. And once they knew the power of that technology, that's when they gained the confidence. And luckily, around that time, mobile proliferated everywhere. Then, with all these Facebooks and YouTubes of the world reaching there,
Right.
so the consumer is today, even the rural guy is equally tech savvy. There's no difference between rural and urban that way. But
Yeah.
a urban guy will say use a ATM, a rural guy will use a micro ATM. That's the only difference. But the need is the same.
Understood. Understood. So that brings me to the next question, actually, because the other big wave that swept India and actually penetrated well to rural areas as well was actually UPI. And
Yes.
Sarvatra has actually been at the forefront of the entire UPI revolution as well. In fact, you managed to crack the entire fintech space pretty well. You were serving large names like Google Pay, Phone Pay, Bharat Pay, WhatsApp Pay, and also supported ICICI Bank to its UPI journey. So I think if I'm not mistaken, Mandar, at one point you were also servicing or processing almost 30% of the total UPI volumes in the country, right?
50%.
So then it's actually bigger than I thought. And that brings me to a couple of questions. One is, I wanted to understand what's your UPI journey, right? And what's been the journey as you grew with UPI? And I also wanted to understand what are some of the scaling challenges, because UPI volumes has exploded, and it was at one point of time a bit difficult for banks also to keep up as far as tech infrastructure is concerned. So how did you actually manage this whole piece as well? That's something that we wanted to understand.
So it was as you correctly said, it was an interesting journey over 20 years. So once we got this whole cloud computing going for rural India, this came to the attention of large banks like ICICI Bank and IDBI Bank. That how are we managing to run the infrastructure at such low cost? Because finally we had to run it at a very low cost, have a very high uptime, and have the still the best speeds possible.
Right.
What we had to do for rural India suddenly became a big plus for us in the urban India. And that's when the first project that we got invited to was IMPS.
Okay.
So we built the IMPS switch for ICICI Bank and IDBI Bank, plus our 600 odd small banks. And that's when the latest technology started being developed by NPCI. We became the first one to deploy them. So after IMPS, the next big thing that came was UPI. because UPI is a very different system, probably the first ever in the world.
That's right.
All real-time payment systems, always the money goes from one bank account to the other bank account through the apps of the individual, what you can say, bank's app. This
Yeah.
is the first time a third party app was allowed into the payment world, which was not there anywhere in the world. So tomorrow, or in those days, like Google Pay and Paytm were the first to get launched on UPI, and they could be banking with any bank in India, but still they could transfer money between two different customers. That is what UPI's uniqueness was there, and we were the first one to deploy UPI, and we started on that, and the journey was fantastic because nobody thought that transactions should could grow at this level because of this third party apps.
Yeah.
So the specialist consumer apps like Google and WhatsApp and all this started coming, who knew how to reach the consumer. They just grew the transactions exponentially, and all predictions of transactions went wrong because I'll tell you, before IMPS or UPI, the entire everything is calculated transactions per second, right?
Right.
So at that time, India collectively on ATM switch was anywhere between 50 to 100 transactions per second,
Yeah.
uh, all banks included. And for Sarvatra, for these cooperative banks, our big challenge of infrastructure was to reach one transaction per second. Just imagine, every second one transaction successful happens, which
Hmm.
was considered big. And just now look at the scale of UPI, where the entire country for ATM was at 50 to 100 transactions per second. We just benchmarked our system at 3,000 transactions per second for one bank.
That's simply crazy in terms of the number of volumes.
Means
Yeah.
nobody could have imagined in their wildest dream that there was so much of what you can say requirement of the consumer to do such kind of transactions.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting, Mandar. And you must have had a pretty good ringside seat to this entire payments revolution that swept through the country in the 2 decades plus that you've been associated with the industry. Talk to us a little bit about some of the trends that you're now seeing, right? A lot has happened in the past two the stage that we got through. So we want to understand from your perspective, what are some of the trends that you're now seeing in the industry and what's in store for the future?
Yeah. So now when this COVID wave started, expectation was naturally UPI will grow like crazy, IMPS will grow like crazy, and they grew almost like 10 to 20% month on month. Which was like a very big thing. But the dark horse of this whole COVID time payment platform was APS, Aadhaar enabled payment system.
Right.
So as the urban labor moved to rural to their villages because of the COVID problem. What happened is that they suddenly found themselves with zero. They didn't have debit cards, nor they had access to any bank whose branch was there in rural India.
Right.
Now that's when the business correspondent who were set up by Reserve Bank India along with all the banks, who had nothing but a small micro ATM terminal with a biometric. So
Yeah.
now these consumers suddenly found themselves going to a micro ATM, just entering their Aadhaar number and selecting the bank where their account is attached, and just putting the fingerprint and withdrawing cash. So suddenly, transactions which used to be like for us about a lakh per day,
Yeah.
suddenly went to 50 lakh per day.
Okay.
So 50 times growth happened in AEPS, and that was witnessed by all operators and all what you can say banks. So the infrastructure of the banks got stretched in all directions. UPI was growing, IMPS was growing, but most uniquely, Aadhaar started growing.
Hmm.
And these are the things which are what you can say very very unique. And now with RBI policy allowing PPI operators also to be part of the payment system, that is going to be the next crazy wave. And of course, the most important thing that's going to come in is the blockchain.
What are your views on blockchain, Mandar?
So that's what you can say. It's how blockchain can be used in payments. This experimentation is happening across the world, but in India, with our regulated what you can say payment space, the best of both worlds is going to happen with the Vajra platform. So I think Vajra platform of NPCI blockchain will be the next big revolution after UPI payments.
Understood. So, Mandar, after that quick look at your journey and what you've been doing in the last couple of decades, right, for Sarvatra and for the industry, we thought let's focus a little bit more on Sarvatra right now. So, can you talk to us about some of your flagship products that you have at Sarvatra?
So Sarvatra, our flagship product is Sarvatra UPI platform, which now we are porting to cloud,
Okay.
and we were the one of the again the first ones to put it on a large cloud like Oracle Cloud. So that's what is going on currently. That's our flagship product. But our entire payment stack. So we give the entire payment stack to a bank, so they don't have to worry about choosing about whether to take AEPS or IMPS or UPI. We
Hmm.
just give a complete platform, and they can use pay per use kind of a platform, hosted pay per use platform. And because of that, all the new generation banks like small finance banks and payment banks, most of them are on server. So
Understood.
whether Equitas Bank or Capital Bank or Jana Bank, they're all using Sarvata platform in a very beautiful way. And then they don't have to worry about this whole payment infrastructure. The latest bank to come in that is NSDL Payment Bank, which is a very innovative bank. So these guys are now able to what you can say imagine a very different future.
Understood. Mandar, when I was going through your product portfolio, right, also noticed you launched this new product called Sarvatra ATM. So, can you also tell us a little bit about this new product and what's been the traction for it so far?
Yeah. So what happened is that we realized that while all these digital payments are going on growing rapidly, but the need for cash still remains,
Right.
and ATMs are closing down everywhere. Like your standard ATM, you don't know whether the ATM will be open or closed, whether
Correct.
cash will be available or no.
Correct.
And banks are also going in for ATMs only mainly at their branches. And if it's at a branch, usually their customers only use it. So, but cash still remains very very in need. Across the world, if you see, the digital payments are mainly substituting the checks. Cash is still a very strong and the easiest way of payments in the world. So, what we thought is if we are able to convert the regular kirana shops and general stores and medical stores into ATM points, then that would make it a very convenient thing for the consumer staying around that. So, instead of drive to an ATM, we said walk to an ATM. So
Okay.
that's our keyword. So we want people to walk to an ATM. And where do they generally walk to? They walk to the regular general store. So
Right.
while they walk to the general store, while they do their shopping, and if they can withdraw cash there, that would be a good thing for the shopkeeper also, because his cash gets utilized. He doesn't have to go end of the day to deposit cash in his bank. And also for the consumer, it's easy that he gets the cash and he's likely to spend some part of it there itself, which will increase the footfall also for the retailer as well as spend for the retailer. So with based on that, if you see for small ticket items, people still prefer cash. Only for large ticket items, people use a card. So that was the thought that while we go on the journey of digital, we have the infrastructure which we use to put these micro ATMs across rural India, but our urban customers also need that. That's why we launched a Sarvatra ATM. We piloted it in about 2,000 shops in Pune and Mumbai,
Hmm.
and we got phenomenal response for that. And very recently, now we have tied up with Pfizer, which is one of the largest merchant POS company in the world. And in India, they operate the ICICI Merchant Services Limited to enable cash withdrawal at their regular merchant POS terminals. And that has just started for us. So we'll roll it out across India very soon.
Mandar, that's a very interesting observation that you have got, because about last 2 months I've actually not withdrawn cash at all, and I was thinking we have really moved away from cash. But yesterday itself, I was to travel from Mumbai to Pune, and two
Hmm.
of my cabs cancelled on me, saying that, okay, you're not paying in cash, you're paying digitally. I can't take you. So it was
Oh,
a rude reminder to think, okay, cash is still the king, and I didn't have cash on me at all. So I
yeah,
think it's a very, very interesting solution. People tend to think that cash rules the roost only in the rural segment, but within the cities as well, there are moments when you really need access to the cash. And plus, you're not only giving access to the cash, but you're solving the cash management problem at a lot of shops as well, which is a huge problem and cost for
yeah.
all of them, right? Now, looking at all these and the products, Mandar, you explained, and you also touched upon the revenue models that you have, but I just want to spend some time for our listeners, because this is very interesting, right? The products that you have spoken about, what are the key revenue models or revenue line items that you have for each of your products?
So what we did is that we kind of combined all revenue models into one single revenue model, which is per transaction. So I realized this earlier method was you sell a software to a bank and
Hmm.
then charge AMC and do all those
Yeah.
things. So I realized that this is all going to be redundant very soon. So as I
Right.
said, we were the first in cloud computing many years ago. Again, we are the first one to charge as a transaction fee based model.
Hmm.
So we charge per transaction only, and we are adding more and more products into the portfolio, but still it's per transaction model only. So banks
Absolutely. Hmm.
and consumers pay per transaction. It's usually the banks who pay.
Understood. And it moves banks' cost also from capex to opex, which is good for them as well. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
and not only OpEx, it is per transaction. There were many
Yeah.
OpEx companies also who used
Mm-hmm.
to charge bank, per kind of per branch or something.
Ah.
But we moved even away from that. I said the risk of the uptime should be with us.
Hmm.
When it's
Hmm.
OpEx model, still the uptime risk is with the bank.
Hmm.
Here, if there's no transactions, there's no money we get,
Yeah.
which that's the level of commitment we had to reach,
Hmm.
where we should have been confident that no transactions, no money, and that's also gave confidence to those banks, small and large, that these guys mean business. If they don't get transactions, there's no money.
Got skin in the game. Little skin in the game, so that it is very clear.
Skin and body and everything.
Everything in the game.
On a lighter note, Mandar, when I was researching for this episode, I found out that you were once a singer. I
Yeah,
just wanted to understand what's the story behind it. You even had a hit single called Nazar Nazar that featured on MTV back in the day, right?
yeah. So basically, I've been doing these both things in parallel. So I always had this hobby of music. So I'm a music director also, and a singer also, and a songwriter also. And I continue doing that. In fact, just 2 months back, I released an album with one of the top classical singers of India, Rahul Deshpande, and me. Together, we released an album called "Theek Hai Chaan Hai Mast Hai," which is a album based on the poetry of legendary Kavi Suresh Bhatt. And about 6 years back, me and Asha Bhosle, we did an album together. So that continues for me. That is what I do other than work, and it keeps my creative juices flowing.
Can we ask you to sing us this little something, Mandar?
Um, okay, I'll sing my famous song Nazar Nazar.
Excellent.
नजर नजर मिली जो कल दिल मेरा गया मचल मचल नजर नजर मिली जो कल दिल मेरा गया मचल मचल मैं हूँ किधर दिल है किधर मुझको नहीं कुछ भी खबर दुनिया ही गई बदल बदल नजर नजर मिली जो कल दिल मेरा गया मचल मचल.
Amazing, Mandar. Amazing. I never thought a fintech podcast will become that interesting. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So, Mandar, this entire conversation has been a revelation and it's been brilliant for me, because this is something I did not have a deep knowledge about. Elroy told me about this. So, this entire episode has been a big learning experience for me as well. Now, Mandar, if our listeners want to learn more about Sarvatra, what is the best way to get in touch with you, with Sarvatra and you?
So our website, and there is those emails on which they can write to us. That is the best way. I think that's the best way. Sarvatra.in, and there is support at Sarvatra.in. They can write to it, and we are very proactive as a company. We are the largest startup, or largest oldest startup, and probably the only startup which went from rural India to urban India, and hopefully will go international.
Absolutely, Mandar. That's quite a story. So excellent, Mandar. We'll include those details or details in our show notes. And thanks a ton, Mandar, for taking out the time to speak to us and taking us through all this and also singing for us.
Yes, thanks a lot.
So that's it from India FinTech Diaries for this week. Do log on to our website indiafintechdiaries.com for exclusive content. We have also started a Substack newsletter. If you haven't yet subscribed, we would highly urge you to do so to get regular updates from us on what's happening in the Indian fintech space. Until then, stay safe.